Here is Dima, CEO of Everclear Foundation, and Will from RhinoFi. Hey, Will.
Hey Dima, how you doing?
Good. Great to have you here. So we're going to have this quick conversation about our integration, which is pretty incredible. We're very, very happy to have you as our rebalancers. But I think it's important to start with just sharing why rebalancing is important for you and why is it a challenge. So could you share more?
Yeah, so I think this sort of goes a lot into how the landscape is evolving for interoperability generally across blockchains. But RhinoFi is a bridge that operates to help people move instantly between many different rollups and chains, whether EVM or non-EVM. And what that requires is we have to basically hold these liquidity pools across many different chains. And when people are bridging from one chain to another, they basically deposit into one pool and receive the funds from another pool. And lots of the time, people are going in both directions, and so their funds kind of balance each other out. But we have cases, so for example, like around the launch of the Trump meme coin on Solana, where
Yeah.
suddenly everyone wants to move from all these different chains onto Solana at the same time. And so they're all depositing from lots of different blockchains, but then all withdrawing on Solana, and the liquidity pool becomes empty. And so essentially, there are solvers that are then helping move funds from lots of other chains back to Solana to keep those pools topped up. And that's the kind of rebalancing that is often like a limiting factor. And when it takes a long time to rebalance, which depends on the blockchain, we need to find other ways of doing that. And that's where we have partnered with Everclear to help keep those that rebalancing happening much faster, so that users can keep bridging and moving whichever chains they want to move to.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a very sophisticated process, right? And basically, you're abstracting away the complexity of bridging for users, right? I'm curious, how have you been doing this like historically? Because there are, I guess, multiple options for balancing. How did you do this before using Everclear, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a complex process, and this is where, again, as you're saying, you don't want any users ever to have to worry about this. But it really varies between different blockchains how you rebalance. So some of them have 7-day withdrawals back to Ethereum. Others have much faster withdrawals or transfers. And so historically, we've done this with a mixture of kind of automated systems where we're often using native bridges or even using third-party services that allow you to kind of bridge at a much slower pace. For example, like using a messaging protocol, and then claiming those and moving them. But it's very automated for some blockchains, very manual for others, especially newly launched ones.
Yeah, and I guess like you can also use sometimes Sexes like Binance or Kraken or whoever, and maybe like a mix of other bridges, right? So it like a very complex system to operate. Okay.
Exactly, and wherever possible, we want to kind of sort of encourage other people, other services to kind of rebalance, on our like rather than us doing it ourselves. And often they're using services like Binance, Kraken, and other centralized exchanges that let you deposit and withdraw from different chains.
Yeah, but also in our experience, the problem is that sometimes like they don't support certain chains that you want or certain assets, or there are limits, or like if you use other bridges, it can be just like expensive, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the most serious problem is for a small number of very popular chains, there are 10 or 20 ways you can rebalance, and it's very low cost and very fast. But for the much wider range of chains, often there's only one way, sometimes that you can rebalance, or there are no really good ways. And so it can be very expensive when you can do it, or very slow. And there aren't really good solutions that you can use until, for example, partnering with Everclear, which does have a much wider range of chains that you can then use.
Yeah. Okay, well, switching to Everclear, how are you using us right now? Like any specific pathways or yeah, like just in general, how do you rebalance?
Yeah, so typically right now we've been sort of testing Everclear out in our
Yeah.
systems, and been really sort of happy with how it's working and what it can allow us to do. And the most common way that we've been using it so far is particularly on chains that are accumulating like very large numbers of deposits. We're then using those to send the funds back to Ethereum much faster than might be possible using the kind of native withdrawal, which often might be 7 days, for example.
Yeah.
So that saves like a huge amount of time of where funds would often be otherwise locked up and unable to be supporting people bridging, and also could save costs because if we really needed them urgently, otherwise we might have to pay some very expensive fee to kind of use some third party service to get back to Ethereum. So we particularly used it on routes like Base back to Ethereum, but also like Tycho, Scroll, and Sonium, Unichain, and others. So really liking it so far.
Yeah, well, that's great. And just as a note, Everclear has like 1.2 bips protocol fee, which is pretty low, I guess. Okay, so what's one thing that you like most about Everclear, like across the board?
Yeah.
What's that?
So, I mean, the thing that it really means for us is that we can keep our bridge operating for more users in the peak demands, and that's really where it's mattering most to us, is when there is peak demand. Because during often normal operations, we don't really see these liquidity pools coming under stress. But what used to happen in the past is when there's suddenly lots of demand to move to a particular chain, we either have to kind of limit the amount that people can bridge to that chain by reducing the maximum size, or we have to increase our fees to kind of reduce the demand again. Now, when we have Everclear as a backup as a solution here, people can keep bridging to those chains, and we can then rebalance using Everclear quickly to keep that route open and to keep more and more people able to access that chain. And so that's really, we've seen a big difference in that, and that's been sort of a huge benefit.
Yeah, well, that's a pleasure to hear that, but obviously Everclear is still in its early days, and there is a lot that the protocol can learn and where it can improve. Also, as we saw on the weekend, right, there was lots of volume on base to mainnet, and like we definitely can try to do a better job there, like to handle higher volumes. So the question is, what's one thing where Everclear should improve, or like what's your wish?
I mean, I think what we're happy with Everclear so far is good fees and good and pretty fast to move to the chains we want to move. I think what we'd always ask for is more chains.
Yeah.
And actually, the offering is already very complete. I don't know exactly how many chains you've got, but it covers most of the ones we'd want. But I think we're always looking for more routes and more chains.
Okay, cool. Well, Solana is coming. I don't know, like your appetite towards that, but yeah, it's on the list in March.
Ones, yeah.
Cool. Well, maybe my final question is, interoperability is the topic this year and a big challenge for the space, right? What's your hot take on interop in 2025?
Yeah, it's I think everyone's asking this question. It's on everyone's lips. It was, I think, again, a huge theme at DevCon end of last year, and it will continue to be. Ultimately, I think a lot of people feel, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem, which is where sort of my background has come from, that it's going to be the defining question that is going to determine whether or not Ethereum and its roll-up ecosystem is successful. But I think we're going to see massive commoditization this year, in that there are so many different solutions and ways of sort of moving between chains, competing with each other, that the cost will come down, which is a good thing for users, but the complexity will go up because there are just so many different sort of competing sort of ways that you could move between chains, so many different mistakes you could make. And that's where I think that there's an opportunity to kind of build a real cohesive sort of layer on top of all of this to try and make it easy for end users, whether those be people, consumers, or whether they be businesses that want to sort of try and build things on top of all these different blockchains.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I also expect actually some sort of consolidation. Maybe we have quite a few protocols and there are like network effects, but from another hand, seeing banks launching stablecoins soon, we'll probably have more consolidation there, which is like the opposite trend, right? So it's funny to see what will actually happen this year. But yeah, thanks so much, Will, for joining the live stream. I guess that's the end of our conversation. And yeah, guys, please use RhinoFi for cheap and fast bridging across different chains. That's an incredible protocol, and we're happy to support it. So yeah, have a good day, all.
Cool. Yeah, really glad to be working with Everclear.
Thank you. Bye.